Okay, so what we're going to do really quick is I'm just going to show you guys the interface of Photoshop. So when you first open up Photoshop, this is what you should see, give or take a couple of these images here. These are my most recently opened imagery and projects that I have opened within the past couple of days. So you can change this from last opened, by size, and by kind. You can also create new images or open new ones here, or new projects. So I'm going to create a new project, which will open up my new document creation window here. So you can do recent saved sizes. So I have a custom size here of 1920 by 1080, another one of 2048 by 2048, and the default Photoshop size of 7 by 5 inches. You can also save individual ones that you will use most often. You also have presets here for both photo, print, art illustration, web, mobile, and film and video. A lot of the ones that we'll be doing in this specific class are under film and video. You can also click View More Presets on any of these up here at the top. And there are also a whole bunch of free stuff down here that you can download for free from Adobe for all of these different types. So film and video will look different from mobile, web, art illustration, print, and photo. So I'm going to go back over here to film and video, and I'm going to do this HD TV 1080p right here. What that means is it is 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. You can change this pixels to inches, centimeters, millimeters, points, or picas. I like leaving mine at pixels. You can also click on the name here and give it a new name. I'm going to call mine Photoshop Intro. You can also change the orientation to be portrait or landscape. You can also change your resolution. The higher your resolution, the more detail you'll get. So I'm going to go ahead and change mine just to 200 pixels per inch, which you can also change to pixels per centimeter. Since I'm using inches as a more baseline for me, pixels per inch works better. Now, the higher this resolution is, like I said, the more detail you'll get. However, the higher that number is, the larger your file size. So if you're trying to make something that's a lot smaller with less detail, 72 works great. If you're trying to make something that's a lot more detailed so you can put more information in there with a larger file size, 200 works really nice. We also have color modes. So currently I'm in RGB. That works really great for viewing online. CMYK color works really great for print. Grayscale if you need something only in grayscale, and bitmap if you're going to be using things for alpha channels and other things that you might need to know if you're going to be doing game design. We also have different bit rates here. So 8-bit allows you to just have straight normal colors. There's no transparency at all. 16-bit will allow for transparency, and 32-bit allows for alpha channels. So I'm going to leave mine at 8-bit. You can change your background contents to be white, black, or a random color just by clicking this little box. I'm going to leave mine at white, and I'm going to hit create. So what that does is it automatically generates an image here. Now I do have a grid line set in on here because this is how I had mine set up before. So I'm just going to go ahead and come over here to Window and Workspace, and I'm just going to reset my layout here. So you should actually get something that looks a bit more like this. And you might have some blue grid lines over here on your image, but you will have this thing over here that says Learn and Libraries. These work like tabs in a browser, so you can click and drag them to condense them, but you can also click on these little buttons right here to close the group. It just gives you a bit more space to work with, but they are really neat to have. You can use the library section to look around at things that are in your personal library, and you can use the Learn tab to learn something new. So we do have color and swatches up here at the top. I can manually change the color of my brush just by clicking and dragging inside of here. I'm going to take it back to black. I had it at red. But if I wanted to change to an individual color, I could click on that and you'll see my color automatically changes to that color. Swatches are really good if you're going to be painting or if you're going to be doing anything that might require touch-ups with specific colors. We then have our properties. This is our document properties. It'll show that we are 9 by 6 inches by 5.4 inches at 200 pixels per inch. But we also have our adjustments here. This is all the color correction tools that we could use. We'll go over that in a different video. And then we have our layers, channels, and paths. The only two we're going to be looking at in this class are layers and possibly channels. Channels work in the RGB, so you can have your red is painted in one color, green and blue, or all three, or you can have an alpha channel in here for transparency. We also have our layers. This is where we're mostly going to be working. Currently we have a background layer here that is locked. We can unlock it by clicking the lock and relock it by clicking this lock right here. This just means that we can't change anything too big with this layer. And you see when I unlocked it, it turned to layer 0. Now I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer that is found down here at the very bottom of the screen with this little piece of paper with its little end turned up. If we click on that, it will create a new layer. Having more layers allows you to do more things and layer different operations so that you don't have to worry about accidentally deleting the wrong part. I will show you more about that in a different video. You can also delete layers by clicking this little delete button right here. It will prompt you, are you sure? You can hit don't show again if you want to. I'm just going to hit yes. We also have new groups. You can create a group if you have multiple different layers. You can put a whole bunch of layers inside of a group and then hide individual groups. And then we have all of our color correction options that we saw over here in adjustments right here next to it. We have our mask button, which will not let us click because we are currently on a locked layer. We have effects. If you have an effect that is on your layer, which we will go over in a different video, you can toggle them off and on by clicking that effect button. Now, more about the actual interface of Photoshop here. So we have all these buttons up here at the top. These are pretty standard. You have File, Edit, Image, Layer, Type, Select, Filter, 3D View, Window, and Help. File will allow you to create and open new projects as well as close. You can also surf and bridge. You can save as, you can export as different types. You can also create and automate scripts in here as well as print. You can, inside of Edit, this is where all of your tools to change how certain things work. Inside of Photoshop R, you can undo and redo anything with Control-Z and Control-Shift-Z. You can change the fill and stroke on your text. You can transform, which means change the shape and scale of anything inside of Photoshop here, as well as change any color settings and preferences that you might want. I'm going to go ahead and show you the preferences here. I'm just going to click General. And what this does is it opens up a different window that will allow you to change any different type of preference that you could want inside of Photoshop. Now most of these are going to leave pretty standard. Inside of General, you don't really want to touch too much of these. Same with Interface. This is where all your color choices are. This is all up to you. You can pick how you want these. I'm a big fan of the standard default kind of grayish theme, but I can also change them to darker, light, or bright. Depending on your personal preference, you can change this how you want. Workspace is about the same as General. You don't really want to touch this too much. It just allows you to change things. You can change if you have larger tabs or shorter tabs. It changes this little up here to be thinner or thicker. The one you mostly want to look at over here is Tools. You really want to make sure you have that zoom with scroll wheel turned on. It's a lot more intuitive to zoom in with your scroll wheel than it is to come over here to the zoom tool every time you want to zoom in or out and then click and hope you click the right spot. You can also disable flick panning if you wish. What this does is it determines whether or not your hand tool continues to scroll inside the document or outside the document. And then some people like zoom resizes windows. That just means that your window itself will change, but I'd recommend playing around if you want to use some of these or not. Your history log is not actually your Control-Z. That is actually found down here, a little further down in performance. It's your history states. So if you know you're going to be undoing more than 50 times, you can change that to be higher or lower. And then most of these other tools in here you don't really need to know at this exact moment. In class we will be going over those if we haven't already, but for right now this is all you need to really know. So I'm going to click OK. On here over to image, this is all the ways that we can change our image inside of Photoshop. You can also find all of these buttons in here, pretty much over here in this adjustments, or right here in our little color section here. But something you can't find over there is you can change your image size and canvas size. So if I needed to change this to be larger or smaller, I could just go into this little button right here and manually change the width and height and resolution of my image whenever I like. Layer, this is where you can change everything about your layer, from creating a new layer, hiding layers, locking layers, flattening layers, renaming, and doing all sorts of things with layers. So if for some reason you can't change your layers over here, try over here in the layer section. Type is pretty similar. It's everything you can change about type. Your selection, this is how you can deselect and select layers, how you can look for just a color range, how you can find just a subject, that sort of thing. You can also enable the quick mask mode from here. We'll talk about that in another video. But this is just a good little thing to look at here and be aware of. Filters are quite neat. Filters are pretty much anything you've seen in Photoshop where it looks like they've done something weird or changed something about the image, such as liquefy, added a distortion or blur. It can be found here. You can do some cool 3D stuff inside of Photoshop now. I recommend playing around with it in your own time. It is pretty neat and fun. Now inside of View, this is where you can change how your Photoshop appears inside of your canvas. So as you can see, I have these little dotted lines here. I have this grid in here. I can turn that off and on just by toggling off my extras. But if I still wanted to see parts of my extras here, I can go down into Show and change individual things on what I want to see and what I don't. So if I didn't want to see my grid, but I did want to see my guides, I could turn that off. I currently don't have any guides right now, but you might. Those are the blue lines that you can find in here. You can also turn off and on rulers, and by clicking and dragging your rulers, we'll add those guidelines. So you can see my guidelines automatically that I already had popped back up. And there we go. Now, window, as I showed you earlier, we can change and reset our workspaces. I prefer to use Essentials, it's the default, but please feel free to play around with 3D, graphic and web, motion painting, and photography. They each have different setups, and you might find one is better for you personally than another. You also have other things in here that you can toggle off and on. In this class, we'll be looking at a few of them, but for right now, I'm going to make sure I have my brush and brush settings turned on so that they'll appear over here on my side. And then I also want to make sure, for me personally, I like having my timeline on. I like to have it down here at the bottom, and then I'll sometimes toggle it by clicking and dragging it and bringing it over here, just so I can click and turn it on and off whenever I like. And then help, if you are having a problem, you can go in there and you can click on that and it will offer you some help. There's tutorials and you can look at your account. Now, for how Photoshop works with tools, we'll just go over these a little briefly, but just know that anytime you see a little tiny triangle at the end of any of these tools over here on the side, just means that there are more tools hidden inside. So currently this is my Move tool, or V on the keyboard. If I click and hold on that, you'll see that I have another tool under there called the Artboard Tool. We won't be using it in this class, but it is there. Next, we have the Marquee tools. We'll be having a complete video just on the Marquee and Selection and Lasso tools very shortly. Next are the Lasso tools, our Quick Select and Magic Wand, all the Crop and Perspective tools. We have the Frame tool. This allows you to frame certain things, so it'll zoom and fill a certain size. We have the Eyedropper if you need to pick a specific color. Our Healing tools. This will allow us to fix issues. Our Brush tool so that we can paint. Our Cloning Stamp tool so we can clone specific parts of an image to another spot. Our History brush takes things to an earlier state. Our Eraser. Our Gradient tool and Paint Bucket is located here. We have our Smudge, Sharpen, and Blur tools here. Dodge, Burn, and Sponge. Our Pen tool. Our Text tool. We have our Selection for paths. We won't be doing too much in paths here in this class, but they are really neat and I recommend you playing around with them. Then we have our Shape tools, so you can draw perfect rectangles, rounded rectangles, ellipses, polygons, line tools, and custom shapes. We also have our Move Hand tool. This will allow you to kind of pan around inside of here. And we also have our Rotate View. Rotate View is really cool if you're going to be drawing inside of Photoshop. You can turn your canvas to get it to the exact way that you need it to be oriented if you need to draw in a slightly different way. And then we have our zoom tool. You can zoom in by clicking, holding down Alt to allow you to zoom out, or you can use your zoom with scroll wheel if you have that enabled. Then we have more tools kind of hidden down in here so you can edit the toolbar to how you want to edit it. And then we have our paint tools. So just like over here where we can change our color to blue, we can also click on this little swatch here to change it to any color we like. And if we change this color and we're like, no, I don't want this color anymore, but I've changed this so much, you can do the same with your background color. I've changed this so much, I just want to take it back to default. You can click this little button right here that looks like the exact same thing but small, and it will toggle it back to the default black and white. If you do need to swap the colors from white and black, you can click this little double arrow right here, or it is X on the keyboard. We also have our painting mask button here, which we will look at in a different video, and changing your screen mode. This will allow you to toggle things from different views by hitting F. Now, with these tools here, there are other buttons up here at the very top. Each one is slightly different, and as we go over them in class, we will talk about each one of those. But just so you know, you will have auto select based off of layer or group, transform tools, other different types of tools all through here, and depending on what you have, like I said, it will change. So we have additive, subtractive, multiplying, personal selected masks. If we come down to our brush tool, we have the size of our brush. Just by clicking on that, we can change what it looks like. We have the size and hardness of our brush. We can go into whether we want a new preset for our brush. We can change what mode we're painting in, what the opacity is, the flow, whether it has smoothing, and whether it has pin pressure, and whether if it has symmetry turned on. So each one of these, like I said, has its own little buttons up here. So just be aware as you're using buttons here to also be looking here as well. And that is all for the interface of Photoshop. And we'll talk about the Marquee and Lasso tools in the next video.